Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. My name is Saimah and welcome to Saimah's Experience. In this video, I'm going to go over the one money move that I noticed a lot of Turo hosts don't implement, and it's a super important one. Now, a lot of you guys always ask me what else I do when I'm not doing Turo stuff, what kind of goes on behind the scenes. And of course, throughout the years, I've had many businesses. I started sharing my Turo experience before Turo was even Turo. Back then, over 7 years ago, they were still relay rides. And so as I learn, I like to kind of bring that information back and teach that and hopefully, help you guys out in your lives, because just like you, I'm just trying to figure it out. So I'm always constantly trying new things. And so I think this is definitely an important lesson. And this video is really going to teach you how you can take saving a couple of $100s a month and over the course of your life, turn that into something that will, 5x and hopefully turn into a nice retirement fund. Now, for many of us who are Turo hosts, we do not have 9-to-5 jobs. We don't work for other companies. We often work for ourselves or we have multiple businesses. So I'm definitely in that boat. I don't have a regular day job and I haven't had one since I was probably like 16. I started having my own businesses at a very young age, which means when you don't work for a company and have that regular job, you typically don't have any structure set in place for a retirement account. And when you are self-employed or you have your own businesses, this is just something that isn't talked about very much, but it is extremely important. And especially now more than ever, the way that the world is changing, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the rate at which technology is progressing, the way our markets are changing, the way the economy is changing, it's extremely important that you always remain a student and that you continue to learn so that you can make better decisions for your life, right? Because this isn't like back in the day like it was for our parents, where you go to school and you have that typical job and you have that pension or that retirement account set in place for you, and then you take that early retirement and then just live out the rest of your life however you want. Things are just changing, right? And that means today we don't really have that room to be complacent or to be standstill and not improve our skill sets and not continue to learn and evolve. We have to continue to evolve in order to keep up with the times. And then of course, the hot news these days is the rate at which inflation has really grown, the cost of goods and services going up, and how that eats away at the money that we have, right? So for example, if today $1 could buy you one apple, that could mean tomorrow with inflation going up and cost of goods and services going up, that dollar might just buy you half an apple. So how do you make up for the gap? How do you kind of incorporate daily practices into your life so that you don't end up in a situation to where you retire and then you don't have the means that you need to live a comfortable life? So there are things, simple things that you can do today. And of course, as Turo hosts, when we operate on platforms like Turo, or maybe you're on Airbnb, maybe you're on Etsy, maybe you drive for Uber, whatever it might be, they don't come packaged with retirement plans because that's just not the landscape that we work in. So I'm going to talk about the one thing that I do in my life, which gives me a lot of comfort for the long run. And obviously this isn't financial advice. I am no expert by any means, but this is just something that I've practiced for a long time. It's worked very well for me, but you always want to check with your financial advisor if you have one. Do your homework, figure out what makes sense to you, what makes rational and logical sense for you, and what's comfortable for your lifestyle. So let's get into it. And by the way, as I get into this topic, I would love to get your guys' feedback because I know that this is a bit different from my typical Turo how-to videos, but this all goes hand in hand if you're a Turo host or if you're establishing your own businesses or you plan to. You want to make sure that this is a part of the plan. So I would just love to know what you guys think. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, I am a huge fan of figuring out where I can put my money so that it grows over the long run. How can I invest? What things interest me where I can put my money and it doesn't take too much of my time or my labor, and that can grow over the long run. And one of the things that I absolutely love is IRA accounts, right? So for those of you that work regular jobs, you typically have a 401k retirement account. But an IRA, otherwise known as an individual retirement account, is great for people who have businesses. Maybe you're a sole proprietor, maybe you work for yourself, you're self-employed, so this is a great way for you to set aside money and let it grow. But IRA accounts are so magical because of the power of compounding. So we're going to get into exactly what that means, and I'm going to try to break down as simply as I possibly can. Now, the first thing that you have to understand is that there are two types of IRA account. The first is the traditional IRA, and the second is called a Roth IRA, which I believe was named after a senator. The biggest difference between the two, and the question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want to owe taxes to the IRS right now, or do you want to owe taxes on that money later on when you're older and you decide to retire? So that's the main determining factor. And in a couple minutes, I'm going to share with you guys where exactly I place my money and which account I go for and why I do that. So basically, with a traditional IRA, the key difference is that when you contribute to your IRA account today, you can take that as a tax deduction today. And when you withdraw that money later on in your retirement years, you can pay taxes on the withdrawals at that time, right? So you get the tax break now and you pay taxes later. Now, with a Roth IRA, it is kind of the opposite. You make the contributions now, but you do not get a tax deduction because you're paying taxes on that money now. So any money you put into a Roth IRA right now is post-tax money. So you've already paid taxes on it today. And in retirement time, when you utilize that money, it is then tax-free. So you don't have to pay taxes when you withdraw it. So that is the key takeaway. And that's why you have to ask yourself, based on the tax bracket that you're in now and the tax bracket that you think you'll be in when you're in like your 60s, which one makes the most sense in your life? Okay, so here's why IRAs and retirement accounts, or things similar to IRAs, are so magical. It's because they utilize the power of compounding and compounding interest. And a real simple way to kind of understand exactly what that means is your interest earns interest. So it has this multiplier effect, which you almost have to visually see to understand the magnitude of it and why it's so magical and why you should do this, because it's going to really help you take that money and help you multiply it extremely easily, and you can kind of set it and forget it. Now, with IRA accounts, whether you're traditional or Roth, your yearly max contribution that you can put into that account is typically $6,000. Now, there are some variables to that, like if you're over the age of 50 and you're still contributing, you can do up to $7,000. And sometimes this changes. Sometimes those limits do increase. But as of now, it is $6,000 per year, which is about $500. Now, basically, when you invest into an IRA, and why it's a lot different than a 401k oftentimes, is because you can choose where that money is being placed, what it's being invested into. So it could be stocks, it could now even be crypto. So it just depends. So I love companies like Vanguard. Vanguard is amazing. I have a Roth IRA through them, and I have that IRA being invested into things like the S&P 500 500, right? And index funds, which are known to return on average roughly about 10% per year. Now, of course, that's not consistent because markets go through changes, but that is the typical average. So I want to jump into a screen share really quick here with you guys so we can just really see visually what happens when you contribute to an IRA retirement account and how exactly that money grows. Now, basically, you can take almost a $500 per month contribution to your IRA account over the span of many years and turn it into over $1 million. Now, I know for many of us hosts out there, we still have many years until we retire. I don't know what the average age of a Turo host is, but from the many of you guys that I personally know, I know we have a little ways to go before we retire. So time is still on our side, but you have to move quickly because you want to utilize time as much as you can. So the more time you give to your IRA or your retirement accounts to compound, the more return you're going to see. So now let's take a look at this compound interest calculator that I found on investor.gov. There's tons of these that you can take a look at. Now over here in step one, it's going to ask you, what is your initial investment? Your initial investment can be anything. So just for example purposes here, I put $5,000. So that's going to be kind of like your principal contribution. Now you don't have to have an initial investment amount. It could just be a couple $100. It could be $100. It could be $500. It could be anything that you're comfortable with. But for this purpose, we'll say $5,000 is what I've input there. Then for the monthly contribution here, I have $500 per month. And the reason why I put $500 per month is because I think that's a pretty good mark. If you can contribute $6,000 per year, then that breaks it up to $500 per month that you want to contribute. Now you can also do all $6,000 up front, which is the way I like to do it, because again, you want as much time as you possibly can get for your investments to really cook and compound over time is kind of how I think about it. Now, since many of us still have quite a bit of time to invest and let this money sit and grow. For this purpose, I put 30 years because that's, I'm seeing that I have at least that much time. And we know on average that the stock market typically returns about 10% per year. And so we're going to put that as the estimated interest rate, which is again, of course, always variable because things can change. And we're going to let our investments compound on an annual basis. Now, when you look at the results here, you can see how your money has grown, and it is truly amazing, right? You can stop investing at any point in time. You can even go in and put, invest for 20 years and stop and let the rest of your money just grow, right? You don't have to continuously contribute in order for it to grow. Let's just say you have a bad year like we did in 2020 and you didn't have the additional income to invest. That's okay, but you always want to let your money just sit and compound. Now, we can see from this chart, it's amazing. In 30 years, we will have over $1 million. But the beauty of it is what our total contribution was. So if you hover over the last point on the green line, the total contribution was $185,000. So that means in 30 years, you 5x your money to over $1 million. Now, of course, everyone has different opinions on that, whether that's good, that's bad, that's sustainable. Of course, what $1 million will buy you today will not buy you that in 30 years, but it's still growth on your money, which is extremely important in order to keep up with inflation and changes. And so it's still a good way for a small contribution on a monthly basis to grow over the long run. What I love to do is click on the show table feature and take a look at how exactly your money grows. This is the part that always gets me every time, and it shows you the magic of compounding, which is so amazing. So let's look at year zero. Year zero, our initial contribution was $5,000. Then in year one, assuming that we are maxing out our contributions at $6,000, we add $6,000 to our first initial contribution, which was $5,000. That gives us $11,000. Now in the first year, we earn $500 in interest on that $5,000. And why compounding interest works so well is because, again, your interest gets added to your balance, and that then gains interest. And that's what they mean by when they say your interest gains interest. So the growth is exponential because of that. And you can see it as you go down the line. Just take a look at future value versus your total contribution. So we can see it right here in the first example. We only put in 11,000, but our 11,000 has already gained. But look at the jump in the following year. It continues to grow. The contribution is $17,000, but now we have $18,650. So we gain $1,650. That's a big jump from that initial $500 gain. And so that's how it continues to grow. And if you continue to go down the years, you can see where all that money multiplies and turns into over $1 million, and your contribution was only $185,000. Now, again, if you are 20, this is amazing for you because you can probably literally contribute for 10 years and have very similar results, right? So again, you always want time to be on your side, and you want to start this as soon as you possibly can, because the more time you give your investments to grow, the greater the returns are going to be over time, utilizing the power of compound interest. Now, going back to figuring out whether or not you should use a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, again, really is based on whether or not you want to owe the IRS now or if you want to owe them later. Now, for me personally, I have decided right now to take the route of doing a Roth IRA, meaning any contributions I'm making is with post-tax money. So I've already paid taxes on that money, and those contributions are not tax deductible. But I'm doing this because I personally anticipate that when I get older, I am going to be in a higher tax bracket, and I don't want to pay a higher tax bracket tax on my gains that I've had over the years. So I want that money to be tax-free. Now, for me personally, I've gone through Vanguard and I have my Roth IRA invested in things like index funds, the S&P 500, so extremely safe. But another reason why I personally went the Roth IRA route is because I recently came across a way to invest or have your Roth IRA hold crypto investments, right? And I know there are a ton of opinions about crypto. Some people think it's bogus, some people love it, some people think it's the future. That is really purely up to you, right? Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. So you should do your own homework and your own research. Now, personally, I think that maybe there is a chance that crypto works out. So you can have multiple Roth IRA accounts. So what I did to just diversify just a little bit is I did this year's 2022's Roth IRA contributions all in crypto, right? Let's just say crypto goes to zero. That's okay because I still have many, many years of contributions in index funds, right? So I feel like that's a very safe position for me. But that's another reason why I went the Roth IRA route, because let's say crypto does begin to see exponential returns over my lifetime, then those gains are not going to be taxed when I pull that money out. And because I personally foresee those types of exponential returns specifically with my crypto investments, I thought that that was a good way to go. So there are some great platforms that you can go through. I'm putting some links down in the description below. These are companies that I have personally used if you're interested in just doing a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA in just traditional investments like the stock market, index funds, the S&P 500. I love Vanguard. Putting the link down below. And if you're interested in putting your index fund into crypto investments, there is a great platform called Retire by Choice, and I'm going to put that down below as well. But again, if you are a sole proprietor or you're an individual business owner and that's the route that you're going to take in your life, you always want to think about where you can place your money. And just to kind of wrap this video up, because I know it's running long, but this is just kind of food for thought, right? Anytime you invest, I believe you really have to have the mindset first before you go in and actually execute on your investment plan. And you can make all different types of investments, right? You can do short-term investments, which for me personally, I consider doing Turo a short-term investment. Every time I buy a car, that's a short-term deal, right? I want to make my money on it within a 2 to 3 year span and then get out of that car. Now, when I put money into something like a Roth IRA, that's my long-term investment plan. So basically, I set it and forget it. I make my monthly contributions. I don't really look at it. I'll check in with it every now and then, maybe just a few times a year, but it's out of sight, out of mind, right? I have that set for later on. You can invest in individual stocks. Maybe you want to day trade. That's a different type of mindset, right? Because that you're trying to take profit on a daily basis. So anything you go into, you want to make sure that you start with mindset first. Understand the game that you're playing, right? Are you in it for the long run? Are you in it for the day-to-day? Are you in it just for the next 2 to 3 years? And that's going to help you really go into it in a way to where you can execute exactly as you need to. And that has been my biggest learning when it comes to investments, whether it's for Turo cars, whether I'm buying cryptocurrencies, or maybe I'm just buying, individual stocks, companies that I'm really interested in. Maybe I'm looking into real estate and properties. I always start off with what is my goal and what is my end game? What game am I playing? So that when things fluctuate and there's volatility, it doesn't mess with my psychology. I'm not worried about it, right? So for example, crypto can go up and down. Stocks can go up and down. Inflation can go up and down. We can have major black swan events take place, and I'm not bothered by it because I know that this money is sitting in that account for the next 30 years and I'm not worried about it. Now, if it was an individual stock where, hey, I was looking to take gains within the next month, then I'm watching the market and I'm paying attention to what else is happening so I can execute accordingly. So my final piece of advice for you guys would be that when you think about whatever investments that you make, wherever you place your money, even if it's just in more Turo cars, think about what game you're playing and get your mindset down first. What is your goal? What's the end game? And then go ahead and make the moves, because that is going to set you up for success. Because the best thing you can do is let your money sit and let it grow. You don't want to interrupt compounding if that is the goal. All right, you guys, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you guys found this video of value. Once again, the companies that I referred to, these are ones that I've personally used and I've had a very good experience with. I would never recommend anything that I don't use myself and I haven't gone through myself personally. Those links are down below. You can check them out. And I would love to just know what you guys think about this topic and this discussion. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Bye.